You're listening to Radio VR in Washington. I'm Ric Young. On the line from Moscow, we have with us the Radio VR political analyst who's with us most every day, Dmitry Babich. Dmitry, how are you?
Yes, doing fine. Nice to hear from you.
And we have to say, too, that today is a holiday in Russia, correct?
Yes, we have been sort of compensated for missing the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day. So the government gave us one holiday more.
Well, good for you. And it's also a very good holiday for all of us to understand International Women's Day. It is great that the government and your society, the Russian society, is honoring women that way. Let's talk about, though, what's in the news right now regarding the situation in Ukraine and Crimea. What is happening right now regarding Crimea? There's been some discussion internationally whether any international laws have been broken regarding the possible vote coming up with Crimea rejoining Russia.
Well, as it could be predicted, most of the international reaction was negative, and I think that President Putin took it into account when he took the decision to sort of protect Crimea from the actions of the new authorities in Kiev. So far, thank God, there was not a single person killed or injured. There is just a war of words between Moscow and Kiev. And Kiev is sort of attacking by providing not very reliable information. Just during the last 2 days, several times, Kiev reported that there were ultimatums issued from the Russian side to the Ukrainian troops stationed in Crimea. These ultimatums proved to be non-existent. They were denied by the Russian side, and although all deadlines were broken, nothing happened. And the latest news is that the fugitive Ukrainian president Viktor Yanukovych, who is now on the territory of Russia, in the south of Russia, in Rostov, he is going to give a speech tomorrow on Tuesday on the situation in Crimea.
But the issue of international law here, from the Russian side of things, I think President Putin has said that they are in accordance with international law in protecting Russian-speaking citizens there, while others are saying that any kind of vote to rejoin Russia is against international law. What's the issue here?
Well, I think that Russia has been a staunch supporter of national sovereignty until recently, and I think Putin's attitude changed for a very simple reason. He saw that this principle was broken in Kosovo. It was broken in a lot of other countries. Every time it was to Russia's disadvantage and to the advantage of the West. So he probably decided that instead of sticking to the old sovereignty principle, Russia could, use this new Western tool of spreading its influence. So I think the attitude is like that. If the law is broken by other parties, if this law is basically non-existent, then we will act according to these new rules. So if people in Kosovo were allowed to create their own state, and it is now recognized by most of the European countries, the Russian minority inside Ukraine and this territory inside Ukraine, Crimea, which is populated mainly by Russians, these people should also be given a chance to proclaim their independence or to strive for maximum autonomy from Kiev, or probably they even can voice their desire to join Russia, or rejoin Russia, basically, because Crimea became a part of Ukraine, or what was then the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine, only in 1954. This was a decision of Nikita Khrushchev. So most of Crimeans view this situation when they distance themselves from Kiev and get closer to Moscow as a reestablishment of historic justice, if you want.
Well, as we look at the situation here in the United States, we understand the Ukrainian Prime Minister will be in Washington later this week. No word whether he'll meet with President Obama, but there's also, again, talk of more financial aid going to Ukraine. And, of course, the EU is promising also, I think, about $15 billion. But overall, what do you think this kind of financial action will do for the situation?
Well, I think that, there's an old saying that a stingy man pays twice. When the whole crisis in Ukraine started in November last year, I remind you that it started because of the controversy around the signing or non-signing by Ukraine of this association agreement with the EU. And Yanukovych postponed the signing of that agreement precisely because he lacked money. So he asked for more money from the European Union to compensate the Ukrainian industry for losses that would ensue from joining the free trade zone with the EU. And the EU didn't give him a single penny. They said they didn't have money. So if all the money that Ukraine is now scheduled to get from the United States and from the EU, if only a part of this money had been given in November last year, the world would be spared a lot of inconveniences. Probably there would be no riots in Kiev, some of them really violent on both sides. There would be no toppling of the legal president of Ukraine, and there would be no legal limbo that this country is in now. There would be no Russian troops getting out of their barracks in Crimea. So a lot of trouble would have been avoided, but now I don't think even the money that is promised by the EU will help Ukraine's problems, because when you have a government which only expresses the opinion of a part of the country, not of all the country, when you have this huge controversy around Crimea, I'm not sure any amount of money that is now proposed by the EU will solve the problem.
We've got a situation many are calling a standoff here. Ukraine is not what it used to be just, a month ago. Where do you see this going in that the country is split? What possible solution do you think is going to bring the country together?
Well, I'm afraid that the situation will not improve in the near future, and I'm afraid we're in for a long controversy between Russia and the West over Crimea, just like the controversy around South Ossetia and Abkhazia grew into a permanent irritant in Russia's relations with both the United States and the EU. Unfortunately, it looks like Crimea will be one more such irritant. There will be no easy solutions. What I hope is that there will be no violence, because I don't think a real war between Russia and Ukraine is possible. There is no animosity between our two nations. We are very close to each other ethnically, and there might be acrimonious, but there is no animosity. And I think that what we're going to have is just a protracted bickering between Russia and its Western partners, a certain chill in Russia's relations with Ukraine, at least until this current government is in power. And probably the situation will ease a bit when Ukraine has a new election and its Russian-speaking minority gets some sort of say in the new Rada. Right now, the Russian-speaking minority in Ukraine has almost no influence on the central authorities in Kiev.
Well, March 16th is coming up rather soon, and there's a vote in Crimea regarding rejoining Russia is coming up. Once this vote is cast, let's say it goes where the majority wants to rejoin Russia, how binding do you think that's going to be, and how will that affect the overall situation in Ukraine?
The final decision is with Russia, because if a certain territory wants to join Russia, it doesn't mean Russia must accept it. We already have this situation with South Ossetia, a separatist region in Georgia, and with Transnistria, a separatist region in Moldova. Both of these regions had referendums on joining Russia, and in both cases, people voted for rejoining Russia, but Russia is not quite ready to accept these new territories as its own. I think that with Crimea, we probably can have the same kind of situation. But what is needed is that there should be no bloodshed, and the Crimea should be protected from pressure and especially from any sort of violent action from the new authorities in Kiev. I think this is the minimum that Russia will guarantee to Crimea.
Interesting take on that, as always, with our Radio VR political analyst, Dmitry Babich. Dmitry, of course, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.